Hey y'all, so November was a little bit weird, but we're going to talk about it, the December TBR, as well as the January 2021 TBR, so let's go. So I say that November was a little weird for me because I felt like I didn't read anything, but turns out I still read 5 books and half of another one, and it feels weird because technically 4 of those 5 that I finished were audio. And normally I feel like I have a little bit of a better balance, so I feel like I didn't read hardly anything, but actually I read quite a bit. The first audiobook that I read was Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward, and this is a nonfiction book, and I really liked it. It's about 5 African-American males who died or were killed, and this woman's connection to all 5 of them and its effect on her life and how she handled it. And I really liked the premise of this book, and I also don't like reading, I don't think any of us like reading nonfiction books or memoirs because they are very personal to these people that write them, and I did like it. The only thing that kind of threw me off about this one was the way she wrote the timeline, and she explains it in the beginning of the book, and it makes sense, where she starts out talking about the beginning of these events, of these 5 deaths, and then she kind of goes to the end, the last death, and she kind of works her way back and then meets in the middle. And it makes sense when she explains it, but when I was reading it, especially since it was on audio, I felt like sometimes I was a little unmoored in exactly when certain things were happening. It was a little hard for me to keep that timeline straight since we were kind of working our way backwards. So I feel like it was an interesting way of trying to get her point of views across, her feelings, her perspective. I felt a little bit disconnected because I kept trying to figure out when certain things were happening, and I feel like it just kind of took me out of it a little bit, even though I really did enjoy it, and I think it was a very good read, and I'm glad that I read it. The second audiobook I read is Then She Was Gone by Lisa Jewell, and I liked this one too. It was a thriller and is about this girl who goes missing, and I don't want to get into any spoilers. I'll probably cover it in one of my mini review wrap-ups that I've been doing here lately, so you'll catch that, more details in there. I may even do a couple of spoilers on it because it has some pretty interesting aspects to it, but I do definitely recommend it. It was good. I think I read this one on Eric's recommendation from Breakeven Books, so I'll link his channel down below, but I think it was good. I'm glad that I picked it up on his recommendation. The third audiobook that I read is The Hollow Places by T. Kingfisher, and this is actually a pretty new release. When I added it to my TBR, I didn't realize that it wasn't even out yet, and so when it released and I found it, I think it was on Scribd, I was really excited that it was there. Or no, maybe it was Audible. I don't remember. I'm pretty sure it was Scribd, but I cannot decide how I ultimately feel about this. It has some humor to it, and I don't mind the humor at all. I feel like it was pretty well done. It did make me laugh in several places, even if it was sometimes a bit juvenile, a bit cheesy, a bit sitcom-y. That's a good way to put it, a bit sitcom-y. And so sometimes I feel like it took away from the world building that Kingfisher was doing. The world itself is completely creepy, and if you take those elements of that book and you think about what the world, where these characters are, it can absolutely be terrifying, and sometimes I feel like the humor took me out of that element, took me out of that ambiance a bit too much, because in a way when I was reading it, I was looking more for a creepy kind of read, and the humor just sort of pulled me out a bit too much, a bit too often. So while I do like it and I appreciate it, just kind of wasn't what I was looking for at the time, but I did still really enjoy it. The humor, the reason why I say it's a bit sitcom-y, sometimes cringy, is because it did remind me of the Janet Ivanovich books. She's still coming out with books, like One for the Money, Two for the Dough, that whole Stephanie Plum, I think was her name, that whole series. I think she's come out with number 26 at this point. I stopped reading at 16 several years ago, but it kind of felt like that same sort of humor, and I did enjoy it way back when I was reading those books. And the reason why I quit reading those was because it was a bit more the same old after so many books. It just wasn't that fresh, but I still enjoyed those books as I read them. So the humor isn't bad, and I still think you should read it if you're interested, as long as you kind of go in knowing that sometimes the humor is going to pull it out a little bit. So if you're looking for something that's not quite as creepy, if you don't want something horrific or something that'll kind of give you chills for too long of a time, give this one a shot. I think it was really good. So the fourth audiobook that I read is If You Tell by Greg Olson, and this was another nonfiction book. It was about a woman who abused her kids and her nephew, and it was pretty hard to listen to. And I think the author did a really good job of portraying this abuser when she was younger and how it evolved. I still find it so difficult to understand how someone can treat somebody else this way. And I also, and the whole time you're reading it, you just want to scream at these other people around, like, why are you letting her do this? And I think it really kind of sheds a light on, I guess Stockholm Syndrome could be what you call it, but when children grow up in these households like this, why they don't say things, or why it goes on for too long. And I feel like it really touches base on that without really giving too many excuses to the people around. So you understand their reasons why they're doing it, even though it doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it right. You just know why they decided to do these things, why they didn't say anything, why she was able to get away with this for so long. And I feel like that's important. Sometimes documentaries, novels, things like that about true crime, it can feel like you're giving this person excuses to their behavior. But sometimes if you're reading something like this, you just need to know what their reasons were. And these reasons aren't excuses. They're not saying, oh, this is okay because, you know, she did these things, but it's okay because she was, you know, had all these other issues herself, or whatever that reason is. So I like how it touched on that, but it didn't at all excuse her behavior, try to soften what the effects of this were and what she did to these people. So for November, I did manage to finish Saint's Blood by Sebastian de Castell. It's the third book in the Greatcoats series, and I actually really liked it. I know several people, Alex Nieves, he is one that said he didn't really care for this third book at all. I didn't mind it. It does feel like a bit of a side quest. It does feel a bit of a step off down another path than what we were going for with the first and second book. So I'm kind of hoping that the fourth book is going to wrap the three of them up and kind of bring these ties together. But I actually really liked this. There is a part in the end where some things get a little bit abstract. It gets a little, you have to really buy into, I don't want to say the cheesiness because that really severely undercuts the feelings, but you have to kind of buy into the premise that these things are really heartfelt, they are a step up, and you just have like this feeling of pride and determination for these characters with these characters. And if you buy into this premise, if you buy into what they believe and that these things are more than just words, that it can really truly elevate this novel. Where if you come in with like a cynical way of looking at it, it can, I feel, come off as a little bit cheesy. So you have to suspend your belief, you know, just really buy into this premise, and it to me, it elevates it. So it just kind of depends on the kind of reader you are, if you can set aside some cynical points of view, because I can be a very cynical person, and so I kind of had to check myself a couple times, but it was still really good, and it is a side quest, but I think it was overall worth it. And this is another thing that made November a bit weird. I kind of got into a reading slump, and I feel like even into these first days of December, I haven't quite pulled myself out of it. And I think it has to do with To Sleep in a Sea of Stars. This book is so gorgeous, and I feel like we were all really excited and really anticipating this book. I read half of it. I have not DNF'd it. It is not a permanent DNF by any means, but I have paused it. I have set it down once I hit the halfway mark. I feel like it was a bit too slow for me right now. I am not a sci-fi reader. I'm gonna go ahead and just put that out there. I know most of you already know this, but I'm not a sci-fi reader. I've only read a handful of sci-fi novels. I feel like I can list those on one hand. So this was kind of an experiment going in for me because I really did enjoy the Aragon novels when I was younger. So I was hoping that since I was an adult and he was an adult, you know, we both grew up, that his adult novel would still be good. And I don't think this is bad by any means. I think it's pretty interesting. It's just, it was moving a bit too slow for me. And it was slowing me down. It's getting to the end of the year. It's getting to be cold outside. 2020 is just, and so I felt like it was just going a bit too slow. I needed to kind of step it up. I needed to just set this down, move on to something else for a little while. So I do plan on coming back to pick this up maybe sometime in the spring and finish it up. We'll see. All right, so let's talk a little bit about my December TBR. I've got 3 books that I hope to physically read and then an audiobook that I want to definitely finish before the end of the year. So the first book is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. This is part of the Reindeer Readathon with Breakeven Books, Eric from Breakeven Books. I'm on Team Nutcracker. And I'll go ahead and link that stuff down below. I'm not sure of what other prompts that I'm going to be hitting, so I won't go into that, but this is the main buddy read for the month. I'm also determined to finish the Greatcoat series, so I'm going to wrap this year up with Tyrant's Throne. This will be the first series and only series that I finish in 2020 that I started in 2020. So I am determined to not carry this through to 2021. This is a series that I just jumped on the bandwagon when Mike's Book Reviews was reading it, and I'm a month behind on it, but I'm still reading it and I'm still determined to finish it before the end of the year, even though I kind of slipped it into my TBR last minute. I hope a lot of you are also watching my Wheel of Time reading journals, so I'm also determined to finish The Great Hunt. This has been drug on for several months, and that's just because of like notes and life and filming, and so I'm determined to finish it this month. That way I can start working on the 3rd book, so I definitely want to finish this one this year. Now the 4th book, that is the audiobook that I want to finish. I'm hoping to get another audiobook in, but I don't know what that will be, but the one that I'm already started and I want to finish it in December is going to be The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. I've heard really good things about it, and so far what little bit I have read, I am pretty intrigued. So it's not something that I normally read, it's historical fiction, but I'm hoping it's going to be good. Okay, so I know I haven't put up my 2021 Goals and Focus video yet. That's going to be coming probably next week from when I post this video. I had to think about it for a second. So it's going to be coming within the next week, but I do want to go ahead and talk about my January TBR. So in January, I want to finish Valor from John Gwynne, which is part of the Faithful and the Fallen series. I read Malice back mid 2020 of this year, and I absolutely loved it. And part of my issue with 2020 is I started a lot of series, and I'll talk about this more in detail in my other video, but I started a lot of series, so I want to go ahead and work through this series because it was so good, and I know it's going to be great, and I want to finish it out, and I'll see what happens. Along that same line, I'm hoping that I can squeeze in Rise of Empire by Michael J. Sullivan. I read Dr. Swords, absolutely loved it, so this is one that I hope to at least start in January, even if I can't quite finish it, but this will be the next on the list after Valor. Now, the main focus of January is going to be Gardens of the Moon by Stephen Erickson. This is starting the Malazan Book of the Fallen series. I'm also going to be starting the series on my channel as well. I haven't quite nailed down the details of how I'm going to be handling this on my channel, but I am going to be doing a similar type project as I am with the Wheel of Time. I may do this book in larger chunks. It just depends on the subject matter. Everyone is talking about how dense and thick it is, so it just depends on how the reading is going with how I break this down to do my reading journal for Gardens of the Moon along with the Wheel of Time reading journal as well. So I'm going to be working on nailing down my filming schedule. Go ahead and let me know which books you guys are planning on reading this month in December and January. If any of these are the same, what you think of them, because I'm really excited about all of these on my TBR, so I'm hoping that excitement will drive me forward and kind of pull me out of this reading slump that I kind of found myself into. Either way, we're going to start 2021 strong, and hopefully it is nothing like 2020. Goodness gracious. So let me know down in the comments, and like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Y'all are as good as gold. Y'all take care. Bye.